She told her friends she was scared. She wrote a secret will just in case. And then she was gone. When Susan Powell vanished in the dead of winter, her husband said she went camping at midnight in the snow with two toddlers. What followed wasn't just a missing persons case, it was a descent into obsession, lies, and one of the most devastating twists in true crime history. And to this day, no one has found her body. If you're drawn to the stories that don't add up, the ones that leave you whispering what really happened, then hit subscribe now, because this is a case you'll never forget. It was Sunday, December 6th, 2009, a cold, quiet day in West Valley City, Utah. Snow had settled across the rooftops, Christmas decorations were going up, and for the Powell family, it looked like just another weekend at home. Susan Cox Powell, 28 years old, was a devoted mother, an active member of her church, and a full-time stockbroker. She loved cooking, spending time with her two little boys, Charlie and Braden, and maintaining a sense of peace in a home that, behind closed doors, was anything but. That afternoon, Susan brought the kids to a church service. Later, a friend stopped by to visit. They knit together, chatted, and Susan mentioned she wasn't feeling well. Around 5 p.m., she lay down to rest. That would be the last time anyone outside her home saw her alive. The next morning, she didn't show up to work. No calls, no texts. Her purse was still at home. And just like that, Susan Powell had vanished. At first, people thought maybe she was just sick, delayed, maybe she needed a day to rest. But as the hours passed, concern turned to panic. Her coworkers were the first to report it. She was always reliable, always early. Her parents tried calling. No answer. When police arrived at the Powell home on December 7th, it was locked. No one inside. But Susan's belongings were still there, her purse, her wallet, her cell phone. Breakfast had been made, pancakes still sitting out on the kitchen table, untouched. Hours later, Josh Powell finally returned home with his two sons. He looked calm, collected. His explanation, he said he'd taken the boys camping at midnight, in the middle of a snowstorm. On a Sunday night, with a full workday ahead, police were stunned. His story didn't make sense, and yet, without any hard evidence, Josh wasn't arrested. Not yet. But something was very, very wrong. To understand what happened to Susan Powell, you have to understand the man she married. From the outside, Josh Powell was just another suburban dad, married young, father of two, software job, church-going life. But behind closed doors, things weren't so clean. The marriage had been rocky for years. Josh controlled the finances. He isolated Susan from friends. He tracked her movements, monitored her email, and would argue over the smallest expenses, even what she spent on groceries. Susan started keeping a secret journal, and then something even more chilling, a last will and testament, hidden in a safety deposit box. In it, she wrote, "If I die, it may not be an accident." She also mentioned being scared for her safety and feared that Josh would do something to her. Friends and family later recalled how she spoke openly about leaving him. She told one friend, "If something happens to me, look at Josh. Don't let it go." But divorce wasn't simple. Not with two children. Not in a church that valued keeping families together. And not with a man like Josh. So she stayed for a while, and then she vanished. From the very beginning, Josh Powell's story didn't sit right with investigators. A spontaneous camping trip at midnight in December? He claimed he'd taken the boys 2 and 4 years old to Simpson Springs, deep in the Utah desert where temperatures had dropped below freezing. But he couldn't explain why he left his wife behind or why he didn't answer his phone all night. His timeline kept shifting. He couldn't remember exactly when they left. He didn't bring blankets or enough food. And when police asked about Susan's disappearance, he was oddly calm. No panic, no urgency. That same day, he rented a car but refused to tell anyone where he went for the next 18 hours. When police finally got it back, the car had clocked nearly 800 unexplained miles. He emptied Susan's bank accounts, pulled the kids from daycare, lawyered up, and when police searched the house, fans were blowing on a wet couch. Susan's cell phone was hidden in the family car, and he refused to take a polygraph test. Josh wasn't just dodging questions, he was erasing her, but with no body, no confession, and no witness. Police couldn't arrest him. Not yet. If Josh thought he could cover his tracks, he underestimated what Susan left behind. Inside the Powell home, police found subtle but haunting details. Her purse was still there, her keys, her coat, even her makeup all untouched. Things no woman would leave behind voluntarily, especially not in winter. On the kitchen table, a half-prepared meal, pancakes never eaten. Then came the digital trail. Investigators found deleted voicemails, strange search terms on Josh's computer, including how to break a SIM card and can murder be forgiven by God? But it was what they didn't find that raised even more questions. Susan's journals, the ones detailing her fears, were missing. And then there was the red minivan. The family's vehicle, which Josh claimed he used to go camping, was cleaned out thoroughly, too thoroughly. Detectives brought in cadaver dogs and they hit on the trunk. Not once, not twice, multiple times. But again, no body, no definitive forensic evidence. All they had were patterns, digital erasure, emotional control, and the sense that Josh Powell was hiding something very dark. Just when investigators thought they had a handle on Josh, another Powell came into focus. Stephen Powell, Josh's father. He lived in Washington state, and when police dug into his life, they uncovered something deeply disturbing. He was obsessed with Susan. Inappropriate, unsettling, completely unreciprocated. Stephen had taken hundreds of photos of her without her knowledge while she was doing chores, playing with her kids, even bending over to pick something up. He stole her tampons, kept her hair, recorded hours of video footage of her brushing her teeth. His journals, filled with fantasies about Susan. He wrote about wanting to be with her. He called her his soulmate. When police confronted him, he admitted it. And in 2011, 2 years after Susan vanished, Stephen Powell was arrested on charges of voyeurism and child pornography. That bombshell moment changed the public narrative. Now people weren't just asking what Josh had done. They were wondering, how deep does this go? Just when investigators thought they had a handle on Josh, another Powell came into focus. Stephen Powell, Josh's father. He lived in Washington state, and when police dug into his life, they uncovered something deeply disturbing. He was obsessed with Susan. Inappropriate, unsettling, completely unreciprocated. Stephen had taken hundreds of photos of her without her knowledge while she was doing chores, playing with her kids, even bending over to pick something up. He stole her tampons, kept her hair, recorded hours of video footage of her brushing her teeth. His journals, filled with fantasies about Susan. He wrote about wanting to be with her. He called her his soulmate. When police confronted him, he admitted it. And in 2011, 2 years after Susan vanished, Stephen Powell was arrested on charges of voyeurism and child pornography. That bombshell moment changed the public narrative. Now, people weren't just asking what Josh had done, they were wondering, how deep does this go? It was supposed to be a safe, supervised visit. February 5th, 2012, a Sunday. Josh Powell was scheduled to see his sons Charlie and Braden for 2 hours at a rental home he'd secured in Graham, Washington. The caseworker pulled into the driveway with the boys. Josh opened the door and let them in. But before the social worker could follow, he slammed the door shut. She banged, screamed, called 911, and then the house exploded. Flames tore through the walls. The roof collapsed. Inside, police would later find the bodies of all three, Josh, Charlie, and Braden. Josh had killed his sons with a hatchet and then set the home ablaze with gasoline. He had planned it down to the minute, wrote goodbye emails, donated their toys, left voicemails. One final, controlled act of destruction. He couldn't control the investigation, but he could control the ending. And in doing so, he silenced the only two voices who might have known the truth about what happened to Susan. The fire at Josh Powell's house didn't just kill two little boys. It ignited a national outcry. Within hours of the explosion, the media descended on Graham, Washington. Headlines screamed, "Josh Powell kills sons in murder-suicide." People across the country were left asking, how? Why wasn't he stopped? How did no one see this coming? But some people had seen it coming. Susan's parents, Chuck and Judy Cox, had been warning about Josh for years. They'd fought to keep Charlie and Braden safe, and now the worst had happened. They sued. In 2013, the Cox family filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the Washington State Department of Social and Health Services, DSHS, arguing that the state had failed to protect the boys. The facts were hard to ignore. Josh had already been the prime suspect in a missing persons case. He had refused to cooperate with police. He was living alone, no supervision, no security measures. And worst of all, the visit took place at his home, not a neutral, secure location. The Cox family's argument was simple and devastating. You handed those boys to a killer. In 2015, a judge ruled in favor of the state. But the Coxes didn't stop. They appealed, and in 2019, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals overturned that decision. The case went back and forth through the courts for nearly a decade, becoming a flashpoint in the national conversation about child protective services, domestic violence, and the rights of parents versus the safety of children. Finally, in 2020, after years of litigation, the state of Washington agreed to pay the Cox family $98 million, one of the largest settlements in the history of CPS failure cases. But no amount of money could fix what had been broken. In public statements, Chuck Cox said, "We didn't want the money, we wanted the boys. But since the state refused to protect them, we had to make sure this never happens to another child." And so their mission changed. The Coxes turned their grief into advocacy, speaking at domestic violence conferences, partnering with lawmakers, and launching the Susan Cox Powell Foundation to raise awareness around coercive control and family court failures. The case of Susan Powell had become more than a mystery. It had become a wake-up call for a broken system. For all the tragedy, for all the media coverage, for all the time that's passed, Susan Powell has still never been found. No body, no crime scene, no confession, just questions. In the eyes of investigators, there's never been much doubt. Josh Powell killed his wife. But without a body, it's what they call a no-body homicide, notoriously difficult to prosecute. And now, with Josh gone, the chances of finding Susan's remains have only gotten smaller. Still, the case is technically open. And over the years, a few theories and clues have surfaced, some credible, some speculative. Let's walk through them. Theory 1. The Utah Desert Mine. Josh told police he went camping in the Simpson Springs area, part of a desolate Utah desert riddled with abandoned mine shafts. Investigators later searched dozens of them, some by foot, others using robotic equipment lowered deep underground. They even brought in ground penetrating radar, cadaver dogs, and volunteer cave divers, but nothing definitive was ever found. Some believe Susan's body may have been dropped into one of the countless uncharted shafts in the area, places so remote and deep, even modern technology can't fully reach them. Theory 2. Digital clues and cleanup timing. Data recovered from Josh's hard drives showed strange online searches in the days before Susan vanished, including how to dispose of a body, how to erase a SIM card, and how long it takes for a human body to decompose. Police believe Susan may have died the night of December 6th, possibly poisoned or attacked at home, and that Josh used the camping trip as a cover to get rid of her body. The theory? He cleaned the house, disposed of her body during the 18-hour window when he had a rental car, and tried to reset the narrative before anyone noticed she was missing. Theory 3. Michael Powell's involvement. Josh's brother, Michael Powell, also raised red flags. Michael was highly educated, quiet, and very loyal to his brother. In the months after Susan disappeared, he scrapped his car at a salvage yard, and when police located the vehicle, cadaver dogs hit on the trunk. But once again, no body, no charges. Then in 2013, just 1 year after Josh killed himself and the boys, Michael Powell died by suicide, jumping from a parking garage in Minnesota. Some believe he knew more than he ever revealed. Theory 4. Susan Powell knew something. Even from behind bars, Susan Powell maintained his obsession with Susan and insisted she had just run away. Authorities have long believed Stephen knew something, maybe not the exact details, but enough to make him dangerous. But after serving time for voyeurism, Stephen was released and died of a heart attack in 2018. Whatever secrets he carried, he took to the grave. Still missing, still waiting. As of today, Susan Cox Powell is officially listed as a missing person. Her family holds out hope that someone somewhere still knows something and that one day her remains will be found and the story will be complete. But the deeper tragedy, the person most likely to reveal the truth made sure no one else would ever speak for him again. And in the quiet, cold space where justice should be, there is only silence. The Powell case wasn't just one crime. It was a chain reaction of silence, control, broken systems, and irreversible choices. At the center of it was a young woman, Susan Cox Powell, smart, loving, funny, fiercely devoted to her children, who saw the danger coming, but couldn't escape it in time. She tried to get help. She reached out to friends, to family, to her church. She even wrote a will predicting that her husband might harm her. And yet, she vanished. And then her sons, two innocent boys who still smiled in school pictures and drew crayon stick figures of their mom, were taken too. The pain left behind didn't just stay within one family. It spread into a wider conversation about how we treat domestic abuse, coercive control, and family court intervention in America. Because this wasn't just a failure of one man. It was a systemic failure, a failure to protect Susan, a failure to believe her, and a failure to protect her children when all the red flags were screaming. In the aftermath, her parents, Chuck and Judy Cox, made a decision no parent should have to make. If they couldn't save their daughter or their grandsons, they would spend the rest of their lives making sure no other family suffered the same fate. They established the Susan Cox Powell Foundation, a nonprofit that educates the public and supports victims of domestic violence and coercive relationships. Chuck and Judy have spoken in schools, in courtrooms, and in front of lawmakers pushing for change in how custody battles are handled when abuse is suspected. One of their biggest victories. In Washington state, a new law passed that tightened the rules for supervised visitation, requiring stronger risk assessments and disqualifying parents under active criminal investigation from using in-home visits. That law is sometimes referred to as Charlie and Braden's Law, a tribute to two boys who never got the chance to grow up and to a mother who gave every warning sign, but still disappeared into silence. Susan Powell's story didn't end with a headline. It ended in silence, in shadows, in questions that still haven't been answered. If this case moved you, if it made you think, made you angry, made you whisper, "How could this happen?" then help us keep these stories alive. Tap subscribe so you never miss a story that matters. Leave a comment, share your thoughts, and most of all, share Susan's name. Because silence protects the guilty. But remembering, that's how we fight back.